The moment, everything changed. The restaurant was nearly empty, the last light of the day slipping behind the city skyline. Amber wiped down the counter for the third time that evening, her thoughts heavy and her heart tired. It had been a long shift. Her feet ached, and the hum of the fluorescent lights above buzzed in her ears like a never-ending drone. She glanced toward the door. A few customers had come and gone, but now only a lone man sat near the far window, hunched over his meal. The clock on the wall ticked closer to closing time. Amber wanted nothing more than to finish her duties and get home to her small apartment, where silence greeted her. But then, just as she was about to wipe the counter again, the bell above the door jingled one last time. In shuffled a man. His clothes were torn, stained, and hanging loosely on his thin frame. His hair was tangled, and the dirt on his face told stories of nights spent without shelter. Yet, when his eyes caught Amber's, they were sharp and clear, shining with something unspoken, a flicker of hope, perhaps. Amber swallowed hard and nodded in greeting. The man didn't respond, but moved to the empty seat by the window. Her heart tightened. Something about him tugged at a place deep inside her, a place she rarely let others see. She walked over, hands shaking slightly. "What can I get for you?" she asked softly. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out nothing. It was empty. Amber's breath caught. Without thinking, she said, "Don't worry about it. It's on me." The man's eyes widened just for a moment. Then he nodded. In silent thanks, Amber left the counter and prepared a plate of warm food and a cup of coffee. When she placed it before him, he smiled, a faint, tired smile that made Amber's chest ache. He began to eat slowly, as if each bite was a small victory. After a few moments, he reached under the table and pulled out a small, worn notebook. The cover was cracked, the edges frayed and yellowed by time. It looked like it had traveled miles and survived years. He slid it across the table toward Amber. "Read this," he whispered. "It's the truth you weren't ready for." Before she could ask what he meant, the door creaked open behind her. Amber turned sharply. A tall figure stepped in, blocking the light from outside. The man was dressed in a dark suit, his face shadowed but stern. Amber's heart raced. The homeless man looked up, his eyes flashing with sudden fear. Then, as if swallowed by the shadows themselves, he was gone. Amber blinked, looking around. There was no sign of him. Only the notebook lay on the table, waiting. Amber's fingers trembled as she picked up the notebook. The leather cover was rough beneath her skin. She opened it slowly. Inside were pages filled with messy handwriting, stories, names, dates, confessions. She felt her breath hitch. One name jumped out at her, a name she recognized, a name tied to her own past, one she had tried desperately to forget. The restaurant lights flickered, and Amber glanced over her shoulder. The man in the suit was still there, watching. "Who was that?" she whispered, clutching the notebook tightly. The man said nothing. Amber's mind raced. Why had the homeless man come here? What was in the notebook that could change everything? Her life, her family, her future, all seemed to hang in the balance. Over the next few minutes, Amber tried to focus. The restaurant was silent, except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional clink of dishes. She flipped through the notebook's pages, each word drawing her deeper into a tangled web of secrets and lies. The man in the suit approached slowly. "You shouldn't be reading that," he said quietly. "Who are you?" Amber demanded, standing her ground despite the fear knotting her stomach. "My name doesn't matter. What matters is that you hand over that notebook." Amber's grip tightened. "I don't know what this is, but it's not yours to take." The man's expression hardened. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he warned. "This isn't just a story. It's dangerous." Amber felt the weight of his words. Danger was something she'd known before, but this was different. It was personal. Her mind flicked back to the pages she had read. Names she recognized, places she'd heard about in whispered conversations. There were secrets buried. A deep secret someone wanted to keep hidden. But why her? Suddenly, the man in the suit reached into his jacket. Amber stepped back, heart pounding. She was ready for anything, but instead of pulling a weapon, he pulled out a small envelope. "Take this," he said, pressing it into her hand. "You'll need it." Before she could respond, he turned and walked out the door, leaving Amber alone with the notebook and the envelope. Her hands shook. Inside, the envelope was a single key and a note. "Find the truth. It's closer than you think." Amber's mind raced. What truth? And where? The restaurant clock ticked on. Outside, the city lights flickered to life. Amber knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. That night, Amber sat on the edge of her bed, the notebook open on her lap, the key and note beside her. Her thoughts spiraled. She thought of the homeless man's eyes, the urgency in his voice, the fear in the man's face who had barged into the restaurant. She thought of her own life, the struggles, the heartbreak, the moments she had buried deep inside, and now, somehow, all those pieces were connected. She didn't know what awaited her next, but she was ready, because sometimes the smallest act, like paying for a stranger's meal, could lead to the biggest changes. Amber closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm ready." What is the secret inside the notebook? Who was the mysterious man in the suit, and why is Amber being pulled into a dangerous game? The key to a hidden truth. Amber's fingers trembled as she traced the smooth edge of the small key. It was old, cold against her skin, and strangely heavy, not in weight, but with meaning. She sat by the window in her tiny apartment, the notebook open on the table before her, pages fluttering in the faint breeze. The handwriting sprawled across the yellowed sheets was hard to read in parts, but each line seemed urgent, desperate, and raw. Her mind kept circling back to that night. The homeless man, the man in the suit, the whispered words. "Find the truth. It's closer than you think." What truth? And why was she the one being pulled into this? She had no idea where to begin. The notebook was filled with fragmented stories, names, dates, a tangled web that made little sense at first glance. But one name kept popping up. One name she could not ignore, her own. Amber's breath hitched. Her heart pounded hard against her ribs. Why was her name in the notebook? She flipped back a few pages and found a hastily scribbled note. "Amber Hayes, you deserve to know what they did." She blinked back the sudden sting of tears. Who's they? What did they do? She whispered into the silence of her apartment. Amber's life hadn't been easy. Years ago she had tried to rebuild herself after a betrayal that nearly broke her. Her mother had vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving her with questions that no one wanted to answer. Amber had buried those memories deep, focusing on her job at the diner, on the small comforts she could afford, and on the hope that one day she might find peace. But this notebook, it was tearing her carefully built walls apart. She flipped the pages again, searching for clues. There was a place mentioned, a rundown warehouse on the edge of town. A name, the Red Sparrow. Amber knew the warehouse. She passed it every day on her bus ride home, always empty and ominous. The thought sent a chill down her spine. The next morning, Amber knew what she had to do. She packed a small bag, slipped the notebook and key into her jacket pocket, and stepped out into the cool dawn air. Her heart was pounding, not just from fear, but from a growing fire inside her. She had to know. The streets were quiet as she walked toward the warehouse. The city was waking up, but the area around the Red Sparrow was still shadowed and silent. Amber stopped in front of the rusty doors. She glanced around. No one watched. She slipped the key from her pocket and tried it in the lock. It fit perfectly. The door creaked open. Inside, Dust danced in the weak morning light filtering through cracked windows. The air smelled of decay and forgotten secrets. Amber's footsteps echoed as she moved deeper inside. She found a metal staircase leading down into darkness. The notebook had a sketch, a map. At the bottom of the stairs, a hidden door. Her hand shook as she slid the key into the lock again. The door clicked open. Inside was a small room, walls covered with photos, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes pinned and taped in chaotic order. Amber's breath caught. This was a secret board. Someone had been piecing together a story, and at the center was her mother's face. Tears pricked Amber's eyes. Her mother, smiling in. A photo that looked decades old, surrounded by headlines about a scandal no one talked about anymore. The clippings hinted at corruption, betrayal, and something far darker than Amber had ever imagined. And then, beneath the photos, a single sentence scrawled in red ink. "The truth will set you free, but it will cost you everything." Suddenly, a noise. Amber spun around. A shadow moved near the staircase. A heart slammed in her chest. "Who's there?" she called, voice trembling. A man stepped forward. Not the suited man from the restaurant, but someone older, worn, with eyes full of sorrow. "I've been waiting for you, Amber," he said softly. Amber took a step back, clutching the notebook. "Who are you?" "My name is Peter. I was close to your mother, and I've been trying to protect you." Amber's mind raced. "Protect me from what?" Peter hesitated, then said, "From the people who destroyed your family." He began to tell her a story of greed, lies, and betrayal. Her mother had uncovered a secret that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. She had tried to expose them, but was silenced. Peter had helped her hide evidence. The notebook was part of that. Amber listened, heart breaking, anger rising. The people who had hurt her family were still out there, and now Amber was standing in the middle of it all. Peter reached into his coat and pulled out a small flash drive. "This has everything you need," he said. "But be careful. They will come after you." Amber nodded, fear mixing with determination. She realized this was bigger than anything she had faced. As she left the warehouse, her phone buzzed. A message appeared. "Stop digging, or you'll lose everything." Amber swallowed hard. This was no longer just about a notebook or a key. This was a battle for the truth, and Amber was ready to fight. What was on the flash drive? Who sent the threatening message? And how far would Amber go to uncover the secrets buried deep in her past? Shadows from the past Amber stared at the message on her phone over and over. The cold glow of the screen seemed to burn her eyes. "Stop digging, or you'll lose everything." Her breath hitched. Who was watching her? How much did they know? And most importantly, what exactly was she about to lose? She swallowed the lump in her throat and stuffed the phone into her pocket. There was no turning back now. Back in her apartment, Amber sat down at the small kitchen table. The flash drive Peter had given her gleamed ominously in the dim light. She plugged it into her laptop with trembling hands. Files began to load, documents, photos, videos, all meticulously labeled. Her eyes scanned the first file, a video titled "The Meeting, March 14th, 2015. The video showed a dimly lit room filled with suited men around a conference table. Their faces were blurred, but their voices were clear. Amber's pulse quickened. The men were talking about a construction project, a new development that would destroy a local neighborhood, displacing hundreds of families. One voice cut through. "The rest? We have to make sure no one stands in our way. If the mayor can be persuaded, if the press is silenced, then this deal is as good as done." The men laughed quietly. Amber's fists clenched. Her mother had been fighting against this project. No wonder she had been targeted. Amber clicked on another folder. Evidence. Inside were photos, documents with forged signatures, bank transfers to unknown accounts, and a list of names. She recognized a few of the names as city officials, local businessmen, even a few reporters. This was bigger than Amber had imagined. It was corruption at the highest levels. Suddenly, a sharp knock on her apartment door jolted Amber from her thoughts. She froze. "Who is it?" she called out, voice shaky. No answer. Another knock, harder this time. Her heart thundered. She crept to the door and peered through the peephole. No one. Just the empty hallway. Amber's skin crawled. She quickly locked the door and pulled the curtains. Shut. That night, sleep was impossible. Her mind raced through everything Peter had told her, everything she'd uncovered. If the people behind this were powerful enough to threaten her, what else might they do? But despite the fear, something inside her sparked defiance. She wouldn't let them win. The next day, Amber met Peter at a quiet cafe. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. "We don't have much time," he said urgently. "They know you're looking. I can help you dig deeper, but we have to be careful." Amber nodded. "Where do we start?" Peter pulled out a map and marked a spot in the city's outskirts. "There's a warehouse where they kept sensitive files, documents too dangerous to be public." Amber's heart pounded. "Can we get in?" Peter smiled grimly. "We have to." That evening, they drove to the warehouse. It was surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by cameras. Amber's nerves screamed at her, but she pushed forward. With Peter's help, they found a side entrance, an old service door barely secured. Inside, the air was thick with dust and neglect. They moved quickly, searching for anything that could expose the truth. In the back of the warehouse, they discovered a locked metal cabinet. Peter pulled out the same old key Amber had found earlier. It fit. Inside were dozens of files, handwritten notes, contracts, letters. Amber's hands trembled as she sifted through them. One letter caught her eye. It was from her mother, addressed to someone named Jay. The letter spoke of fear, of betrayal, and a warning. "If anything happens to me, find the truth. Don't trust anyone but Peter." Amber's breath hitched. Who was Jay? And could she trust Peter completely? Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them. Amber spun around. A figure stepped into the dim light. A tall man in a dark coat. His eyes were cold, unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. Peter stepped in front of Amber. "We're only looking for the truth." The man's gaze hardened. "You're playing with fire." Amber's heart pounded as the man pulled out a phone. "Leave now, or this ends badly." Peter's eyes met Amber's. "We have to get out." They turned to leave, but the man blocked their path. In a sudden move, Peter shoved Amber toward a back door and faced the stranger. "Run!" Peter urged. Amber didn't hesitate. She bolted into the night, heart racing, fear and adrenaline crashing through her veins. She ran until she reached a crowded street, blending into the throng of people. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Last warning. Stop now." Tears blurred her vision. But Amber knew one thing for certain. She couldn't stop. The next day, Amber's world shifted again. At work, a customer handed her an envelope and disappeared into the crowd. Inside was a photo of her mother, smiling, with a man Amber didn't recognize. On the back was written, "He holds the key." Amber's mind reeled. Who was the man, and what key did he hold? Determined to find answers, Amber returned to Peter. "We need to find this man," she said. Peter nodded slowly. "I think I know someone who can help." Amber and Peter traveled across town to meet an old journalist named Martha. Martha's office was cluttered with papers, photos, and fading headlines. She looked up, eyes sharp and weary. "You're Amber, right? Your mother and I used to work together." Amber felt a flicker of hope. "What can you tell me about this man?" she asked, showing Martha the photo. Martha's face darkened. "That's James Collins. He was your mother's partner, until he vanished years ago." Amber's heart clenched. Why did he disappear? Martha sighed. He uncovered something dangerous, then he disappeared without a trace. Amber looked at Peter. We have to find James Collins. Peter nodded. But be careful. The closer you get, the more dangerous it becomes. That night, Amber lay awake, the weight of the investigation pressing down on her. She thought of the homeless man she had helped, the man who started it all. Had he known more than he let on? Was he a warning, or was he a piece of the puzzle she hadn't yet understood? Amber's phone buzzed one last time before she drifted into a restless sleep. A new message appeared. Trust no one. What secrets did James Collins hold? Why had he disappeared? And could Amber survive the shadows closing in around her? The vanishing truth. Amber's hands trembled as she stared at the photo of James Collins again. The man who was supposed to hold the key to everything, her mother's secrets, the corruption, and maybe even her own survival. She had never heard of him before today, but now he was the only lead left. The next morning, Amber and Peter headed to the old address Martha had given them, the last known location of James Collins. It was a crumbling townhouse on the edge of the city, surrounded by overgrown weeds and chipped paint. Peter hesitated. Be careful. People who want this kept quiet have eyes everywhere. Amber nodded, steeling herself. They pushed open the rusted gate and stepped inside. The house smelled of dust and forgotten memories. Inside, the walls were lined with yellowed newspaper clippings and scribbled notes pinned to corkboards. It looked like James Collins had been working on exposing something big before he vanished. Amber's heart pounded as she scanned the room. In the corner, a battered notebook lay half-hidden under a pile of papers. Amber picked it up and opened to the first page. It was James's handwriting, messy but urgent. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But the truth must live on. The project threatens lives, the city's soul. Trust no one but Amber. Amber's eyes widened. How did James know her name? Suddenly a floorboard creaked. Amber and Peter spun around. A shadowy figure slipped out of the dim hallway and raised his hand slowly. I'm not here to hurt you, he said softly. Amber's heart raced. Who are you? The man stepped forward. Into the light. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes and a face marked by worry. My name is Mark. Mark explained that he was James Collins's closest friend and partner. James had confided in him about the corruption and threats. He disappeared after he got too close, Mark said grimly. People wanted to silence him. Amber felt a chill. How do I find him? Mark shook his head. No one knows. But James left clues, pieces of the puzzle that only Amber can put together. Mark handed Amber a small, worn key. This belonged to James. He told me you would need it. Amber turned the key over in her hands. It looked like a skeleton key. Where? Does it open? Mark shrugged. No idea, but it's important. Amber and Peter left the house feeling more determined than ever. The key was a tangible sign, proof that James had planned for her to find him and uncover the truth. But time was running out. Back at her apartment, Amber dug deeper into James's. Notebook. Page after page detailed secret meetings, bribes and threats. But one entry stood out. The warehouse is not the end. The real proof is hidden where no one will look, where the past and future collide. Amber frowned. What did that mean? Her phone buzzed again. A message flashed on the screen. Stop now, or you'll regret it. Amber swallowed her fear and typed back, I'm not stopping. The next day, Amber visited the homeless man from the diner, hoping to find answers. His name was Daniel. He looked older and thinner than the last time she saw him, but his eyes held a spark. Why did you warn me? Amber asked. Daniel sighed. Because I've seen what happens to people who don't listen. He pulled a crumpled photo from his coat pocket. It was a picture of Amber's mother and James Collins, smiling, younger, full of hope. They are trying to stop something big, Daniel said quietly, something that destroyed more than buildings. Amber's mind raced. What had her mother and James been fighting, and who wanted them silenced? That night, Amber's apartment was broken into. She was out running errands, but when she returned, the front door was ajar. Inside, drawers were rifled through, papers scattered everywhere. Someone had been searching for something. Her laptop was missing. Panic and anger surged through Amber. They were closing in, but she wasn't ready to give up. Desperate, Amber reached out to Martha again. Together, they began piecing together a timeline from James's notes, the photos, and Daniel's story. It became clear that the construction project was a front. Behind it was a plan to take over valuable land, connected to a buried scandal, one that involved powerful families and dirty money. One name kept appearing in the documents: Jonathan King, a wealthy businessman with ties to city officials. Amber felt a surge of recognition. Jonathan King's face had been blurred in the video from the warehouse. Amber's mind reeled. Jonathan King was the man behind it all. But why and how deep did his power go? The next day, Amber and Peter planned to confront Jonathan King. They knew it was risky, but it was their only chance. As they approached the towering glass building of King's Corporation, Amber's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "We're watching. Leave while you can." Amber glanced at Peter. "We're already too far in." They entered the building, heart pounding. The receptionist eyed them suspiciously. "Appointment?" "No," Peter said. "We just need to ask Mr. King some questions." Suddenly the elevator doors opened and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. Jonathan King. His smile was cold. Well, well, if it isn't the curious waitress and her friend." Amber swallowed hard. "You know what you've done." King laughed softly. "Do you? Or are you just a pawn in a game too big for you to understand?" Peter stepped forward. "We have proof. Your corruption, your lies." King's smile faded. "Proof? I think you misunderstand. I protect this city's future." Amber's anger flared. "By destroying families, by silencing people." King's eyes darkened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Suddenly, security guards appeared and blocked the exits. Amber's heart hammered. They were trapped. King's voice dropped to a whisper. "Leave now or face the consequences." Peter glanced at Amber. "We can't back down." Amber nodded. "We're in this too deep." Just then, a voice echoed through the lobby. "Let them go." Everyone turned. A woman in a sharp suit strode forward. "Mr. King, this is over." King's jaw tightened. "Who the hell are you?" The woman smiled coldly. "Someone who knows your secrets better than you think." Amber's breath caught. What new player had just entered the game? Could Amber trust this stranger? And what was the final price for uncovering the truth? The enemy within Amber's pulse thundered in her ears as the sharply dressed woman stepped forward, her eyes cold and calculating. "Mr. King, enough of this," she said with quiet authority. "You're finished." Jonathan King's face twisted with fury, but the woman's presence seemed to freeze the room. Amber's heart pounded with hope and fear. Who was this mysterious woman? The woman turned to Amber and Peter. "My name is Evelyn Pierce," she said smoothly. "I've been watching the situation closely." Amber felt the air tighten around her. "Why should we trust you?" Evelyn smiled thinly. "Because I want the same thing you do. Justice." Amber's mind raced. Could Evelyn be an ally or another enemy in disguise? Before Amber could ask more, Evelyn raised her hand, signaling to the guards. "Stand down. They're under my protection." Jonathan King snarled but backed away. The tension in the room was thick. Later, in a quiet conference room, Evelyn laid out what she knew. "I was once part of King's inner circle," she confessed. "But when I discovered his true plans, his betrayal, I decided to fight back." Amber exchanged a glance with Peter. "Why reveal yourself now?" Evelyn's gaze hardened. "Because James Collins trusted me with his evidence before he disappeared." She pulled a flash drive from her purse. "This contains everything: records, transactions, names." Amber felt a surge of adrenaline. But Evelyn warned them, her voice grave. King has eyes everywhere. This won't be easy. Amber nodded. We're ready. The group quickly devised a plan to leak the evidence to the public. But as they prepared, Amber's phone buzzed with an unknown caller. She hesitated but answered. Amber, it's me. The voice was faint but familiar. James Collins. Amber's breath caught. How? You're missing. I'm alive, James whispered, but they're after me. Amber's world tilted. James was out there, but where? And was he safe? Meanwhile, Jonathan King's fury reached new heights. He ordered his men to find Evelyn and Amber, no matter the cost. Amber felt the pressure mounting. She couldn't back down now, not when so much was at stake. One night, as Amber left her apartment, a shadow moved behind her. A figure lunged, grabbing her arm. She struggled, heart racing, but before the attacker could harm her, a strong hand yanked her free. Peter, are you okay? Amber nodded, shaken. Someone doesn't want us to expose King. Back inside, Amber found a note slipped under her door. Stop digging or disappear like James. Her hands trembled. Fear clawed at her, but so did determination. The next day, Amber and Evelyn met with a trusted journalist ready to broadcast the evidence. As the interview began, a live feed started rolling across news channels. The city's darkest secrets were finally out. Public outrage exploded. Protests swelled outside King's offices, but King fought back viciously, denying everything. Amber's phone buzzed again, a text from James. Find me before they do. Driven by urgency, Amber and Peter followed clues from James's messages. Each step brought them closer, but also deeper into danger. In an abandoned warehouse, Amber found a hidden door. The skeleton key fit perfectly. Inside, a small room held files, photos, and a recorder. Amber pressed play. James's voice filled the air. I can't stay hidden much longer. If you're listening, it means they got to me. Or worse. Amber fought tears. James continued, revealing the final piece of evidence, proof of King's involvement in illegal deals and even violent crimes. Suddenly, footsteps echoed. Amber spun around. A man emerged from the shadows. It was Jonathan King's right-hand man. Looking for James? He sneered. Amber's heart pounded. She had to think fast. She grabbed a file and bolted. Peter covered her escape. Gunshots rang out. They raced through dark alleyways, breath ragged. But the danger wasn't over. Finally, they reached a safe house. Evelyn awaited with news. James had been captured. Amber's world shattered. She had come so far. But the man who held the truth was in chains. As dawn broke, Amber vowed to rescue James, no matter what, because some truths were worth fighting and dying for. The truth sets them. Free Amber stood at the edge of the rooftop, the city skyline glowing in the early morning light. Her hands clenched the small photo James had given her before he disappeared, the last clue she had. Her heart ached with the weight of everything that had happened. So much had been lost, so much betrayed, but she was ready. Today would be the day the truth came out. The safe house was buzzing with urgency. Evelyn, Peter, and a small group of trusted allies prepared to break James out of the secret holding facility where King's men kept him. Amber's mind raced with the stakes. James held the final evidence that could bring King down. Proof that no one could deny, but time was running out. Peter paced. King's men will tighten security any moment now. We don't have much time. Evelyn checked her watch. We have one shot at this. Amber nodded, swallowing her fear. Let's do it. Under the cover of darkness, the group slipped through back alleys and underground tunnels to the hidden compound. Amber's heart pounded as they bypassed guards and security. Cameras, the tension thick in the stale air. They found James in a small, grim room, weak but alive. His eyes widened with hope as Amber entered. Amber, you came, he whispered. She smiled, tears welling. We're getting you out. Suddenly, alarms blared. King's men had discovered their presence. Gunfire erupted. Peter grabbed James and ran, with Amber and Evelyn close behind. Bullets cracked behind them as they dashed through winding corridors. Finally, they burst into the night air. A waiting car screeched to life. Amber slid in beside James. "We're not safe yet," she warned. James nodded, his strength returning. Back at the safe house, Amber plugged in the flash drive and began uploading the files live to every major news outlet. The dam broke. The public was shocked. King's corruption, lies, and crime spread like wildfire. Protests erupted across the country. King was arrested within days, his empire crumbling. But the battle wasn't just legal. Amber faced the emotional wreckage left behind. She thought about the homeless man she had helped months ago, the one whose kindness had set everything in motion. His simple act of gratitude had changed her life. Now, standing before a crowd at a community center, Amber shared her story. She spoke of betrayal and fear, but also hope and healing. Her voice trembled with emotion as she said, "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are." The crowd applauded, moved. Among them a man approached, older with kind eyes. It was the homeless man, Michael, now clean and steady. He smiled. "You saved me once. Now you've saved many." Amber realized that true power wasn't money or status. It was courage, compassion, and the willingness to fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Weeks later, Amber and James worked together to create a foundation helping people like Michael, those forgotten, lost or betrayed. Their journey had been painful, but it sparked a movement. The scars remained, but so did the strength. Amber looked ahead, ready for whatever came next. Final reflection. In the end, Amber understood the greatest truth of all, that kindness could spark change, that survival was more than endurance, it was transformation, and sometimes the smallest act could change a life forever. The end.